Burgeonites, he's back. Niv-Mizzy Reborn, our 6/6 legendary dragon avatar, is back. And his flying around the battlefield, entering the battlefield and drawing us all kinds of cards. Well, after so many play tests and experimentation with Niv-Mizzy and the deck tech that you can click on the link below to take a look at, I've come to some realizations on how we're going to move forward with a couple of changes here, and it's going to be a pretty straightforward. We're changing 5 cards out and 5 cards in, and these cards are going to be part of the enhancement, the creature and battlefield enhancement that was depicted pretty succinctly in the original deck tech video. Again, you can click on that link below to take you right there and see what we're talking about. So, what it appeared as I was continuing to play with the deck and play test the deck and do the experimentations with the deck is that I felt like each time I was drawing the cards, I was discarding the same cards over and over again because they just did not seem like they were useful to me at that time. And this was throughout gameplay, testing, and I think it should be a bit more difficult to discard these cards. So I went through and decided to exile some of these enhancement cards and replace them with others. So it's going to be a pretty apparent pattern once we get into the 5 cards that are going to be taken out of this deck and replaced. And the first one is going to be the Shield of Righteousness. This is our Azorius equipment, where it gives our creature +0/+2 on vigilance, and if it blocks a creature, that creature is frozen during its controller's next untap step. White and a blue to equip for 2. I was discarding that much more than I was ever playing it, so I think that is an indication that this is a card that may not belong in this deck. Card number 2, and here's where the trend begins, my friend. Mask of Riddles. 1 blue, 1 black, each of Dimir colors. The equipped creature has fear. When it deals combat damage to a player, I may draw a card. Equip is also 2. Again, I was discarding the equipments. That's really what it came down to. The guild equipments, of which I had 5 total, I was drawing them and I was not seeing the use for them and I was discarding them. And I want it to be a tougher decision. So the third one is, of course, the Demon Spine Whip. A black and a red. And a equipped creature gets +X/+0 till end of turn, and we're only equipping for 1. I mean, it's not like these equipment are terrible. They just weren't synergizing with what I was trying to do. And here's our Gruul equipment, the Mage Slayer. Taking out this one's going to hurt a little bit because I'd like to think that even though the 3 casting costs and the 3T equip, this is a pretty powerful card, but again, I was discarding it. I wasn't recurring it. I wasn't bringing it back. I wasn't chasing after it at all. It was just kind of gathering dust. And if that's the case, let's replace it with something that might be better for our deck and our battlefield and creature enhancement overall. Okay. And lastly, you guessed it, our Selesnya artifact of the Behemoth Sledge. Converted mana cost of 3, 1, and 1 color each of our Selesnya, green and white. Come on, camera. Get off of you. There we go. Equipped creatures getting +2/+2, lifelink, and trample. Okay. These were the 5 that are coming out. 1 from each of the allied colored guilds. So with these 5 coming out, we got to put 5 in their place. And again, it's going to be the exact same thing. We're going to abide by, if it's a creature, it must be legendary. We're going to abide by the fact that it has to be of the appropriate guild colors. Let's see what are going to be the replacements. All right, Burgeonites. So let's take a look at those replacements. We got the 5 equipments. They're coming out. So we're going to pick 1 each of our allied guild colors to replace them. And replacing our Azorius Shield of the Righteous is going to be from Scars of Merodin, Venser the Sojourner. For 3, a white and a blue, we're getting a Planeswalker that comes into play with 3 loyalty counters. To +2, we can exile target permanent we own. Come on, camera, what are we doing here? Is it not? Is it Kiora? Who is it here? Okay. Exile target permanent you own, return to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. And I do believe that this fella here would be a nice target for a little exiling. Drawing more cards, optimizing our hand, maybe setting up our graveyard for something. Okay, that's the +2 ability. The -1 creatures are unblockable this turn, and if for any reason we're able to get up to the big bang of 8 loyalty counters coming off, we get an emblem with whatever we draw. Whenever we cast a spell, we are going to exile target permanent. So I thought that Venser would be a much better addition to enhancing our battlefield, enhancing our creatures, than the Shield of Righteousness. So Shield is out, and Venser is going in its place. Okay. Venser is our Azorius edition for the enhancement. Next up, replacing the Mask of Riddles from the Dimir Guild, is Vela the Nightclad. There's our legendary creature, 4 and a blue and a black for a 4/4 Intimidate, giving other creatures we control Intimidate. And it doesn't explain the keyword here on the card, but Intimidate is your creatures can only be blocked by artifact creatures and creatures that share a color with them. And with us having so many multicolored creature decks, so many multicolored creatures in this deck, I think the Intimidate will have its benefits. I know we have a lot of evasion, but a little extra unblockability along with Venser can go a long way. And additionally, whenever she or another creature leaves the battlefield, another creature that we control leaves the battlefield, each opponent's going to lose 1 life. So Venser would pair very nicely with Vela, the exile target permanent. Each opponent loses a life, comes back into play. That is our Dimir representation. Okay. We took out the Demon Spine Whip from Rakdos, and in its place, we are putting Grenzo, the Dungeon Warden. For X, a black and a red, Grenzo enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on him. We can tap 2 to put the bottom card of our library into our graveyard. If it's a creature card with power less than or equal to Grenzo's power, put it onto the battlefield. I think that the ability to get some of our biggins or other auxiliary creatures into play, maybe getting a little lucky, of course, from the bottom of our library, but just for 2 mana, I think that's good enough to put in there. It could enhance our army, and it's not like we can only do it during our turn. We can end step this too. Good late game mana sink. Grenzo's in. Demon Spine Whip. It is out. Okay. Taking the place of the Mage Slayer, we're going back to the realm of Planeswalking, and we're going to go with Sarkhan Vol. For 2, a red and a green, Sarkhan Vol enters the battlefield with 4 loyalty counters. +1 him, and creatures we control get +1/+1 and gain haste until end of turn. Haste is a fantastic mechanic. I think it's not popular enough. -2, we're going to gain control of a target creature until end of turn. We're going to untap that creature, and it gains haste until end of turn. And if we can uptick to 6 loyalty counters are coming off, and we're putting 5 4/4 dragon creatures into play. And of course, you know they are flying. Sarkhan Vault is our Gruul replacement. And lastly, taking the place of the Behemoth Sledge for our enhancement tier of Niv-Mizzy Reborn, Eladamri's Call. For a green and a white at instant speed, we're going to search our library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into our hand. It's just that simple. We end step this if we have to, grab the creature out of our library that makes the most sense, and then we just do whatever we can. Okay. These are the replacements, folks. We will test it out. We will see how it works. So I decided to take a quick look at how some of these new additions can help our creatures, particularly with some of our Planeswalker abilities here. And Venser exiling a permanent, and we're looking for any of our creatures that have an enter the battlefield trigger. Of course, Niv has the best one in drawing the potential, as you saw from the previous videos, drawing all the cards that we can from the different guilds. Here are a few other creatures that could benefit from a quick exiling by Venser and then returning into the battlefield. Lazoff, he can enter the battlefield and we can surveil one. Tatyova, we're not going to exile her, but if we exile a land and that comes back into play untapped, we're gaining a life and we're drawing a card. Prime Speaker Zagana, if we exile her and bring her back into play, she's going to have some additional counters put on her. Hopefully, if we have another creature in play with some, decent sized power, and we're going to draw some additional cards from her. And lastly, we have Dragon Lord Atarka, where if he comes back into the battlefield, he's going to divide up 5 damage among any number of target creatures or planeswalkers our opponents control. So those are some pretty good targets for Venser, in addition to any planeswalkers that might be getting pretty low in their loyalty. Bring them back at the end of the turn with a higher loyalty, start resetting them again. Okay, so that is Venser. Next, I wanted to take a quick look at Grenzo, as he comes into play with X+1/+1 counters. To utilize his ability, we tap 2 and we put the bottom card of our library into our graveyard. If it's a creature with power less than or equal to Grenzo's power, put it onto the battlefield. And from surveying the number of creatures that we have in this deck, it would appear that the sweet spot for Grenzo would be 5 +1/+1 counters. So if we get 5 on Grenzo, actually, I'm going to take that back. If we get 3 +1/+1 counters on Grenzo, making his power 5, look at the number of creatures that would be eligible to come into play just by casting him for 3, a black and a red. Okay? So his power is 5, bottom of the library, power 5 or less from our deck. Lazoff comes in. Prime Speaker Zagana comes in. Captain Sisse. Campbell, the Council of Allocation. Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter. Joyra of the Gitu. Aurelia, the War Leader. Again, this is if Grenzo's power is 5, so we're tapping 3 for the 3 +1/+1 counters and a black and a red. Olivia Valderin. Wrath Capuchin, the Ship's Mage. Joyra, the Weatherlight Captain. Ikris Shadiki, the Usurper. Tatyova, Benthic Druid. The Locust God. Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts. I'm telling you, how would you like to have Teysa out there so much earlier than her 7 mana cost would indicate? Sigarda, Host of Herons. Storev, the Defkaran Lich. Dragon Lord Ojutai. Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. And Una, Queen of the Fae. That is the vast majority of the creatures in our deck just for putting 3 +1/+1 counters on Grenzo. If we put a 4th counter on him to make his power 6, we're bringing in Dragon Lord Kolagon, Keranos, God of Storms, or Xenagos, God of Revels. If we put 5 counters on him and uptick it to 7, that brings us Eros, God of Victory. And lastly, 6 +1/+1 counters, Atarka, the Dragon Lord. The flying, trampling, 5 damage when it enters the battlefield. So 6 +1/+1 counters can target any single creature in the deck, as long as it's on the bottom. What do you think, Burgeonites? Did we make some good choices here? Are these better additions than what we first had in the deck? We took out 5 guild equipments. We brought in Venser the Sojourner, Vela the Nightclad, Grenzo Dungeon Warden, Sarkhan Val, and Eladamri's Call. Improvements? Burgeonites? Let me know.